The truth about Nebraska's remaining schedule. Is it more difficult than once envisioned?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today.
All right, welcome. It's Wednesday, back on the old regular schedule for the remainder of the week. Connor Happer here, Mitch Sherman there, as we take you off here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. So schedule-wise, you mentioned it at the top there, Mitch, as you look at what Nebraska has done. It's great how this schedule sort of, chunks out a little bit. You got these first 4 games. You get to sit back and reevaluate, make some decisions about yourself, and then you have 6 in a row coming up before the final 3 at Penn State, or I'm sorry, before the final 2 at home at Penn State and at home against Iowa. So this is the biggest stretch right here, and it starts with a home game against Michigan State next Saturday, 3:00 on FS1, at Maryland, at Minnesota, Northwestern, USC, and UCLA. And then there's the last 2 games against Penn State and Iowa. Is this schedule more, less, the same amount as difficult as what you thought that it was at the beginning of the season?
It's slightly more difficult. I like to break this thing down. You talked about breaking it down by the bye weeks. I like to break it down by the months, and we consider the August 28th game part of September, because that's nice and convenient. You have 4, 4, 4. And I think the cutoff before USC is also like the next time that we have to take stock and evaluate. I mean, we're going to do that every week. Don't
right.
Who are we trying to kid here? But the when you're going to be able to have a moment similar to this, it comes after Northwestern. And is Nebraska ready for what is a difficult 4-game stretch? UCLA notwithstanding.
I don't think so.
That comes.
I mean, you never know. They could. That's a
right. They could right the ship. There's talent on that roster. The game's on the road. Whatever. We got time to think about that. But naturally, these 4 games in October are the next chunk of the season for me. And of course, as you mentioned, the bye doesn't come until the middle of November. But whatever. So Michigan State coming in. Spartans are 3-1. Also on a bye this week, and 4th consecutive home game for Nebraska before the Huskers hit the road for 2. Let's just go through really quick, like the up and down of what Nebraska has left, the teams on the schedules. Okay, so the Spartans, I think we'll get to this at the end. After Michigan State, it's Maryland, 4-0 on a bye week this week also. Then Minnesota for Nebraska, which is 2-1, hosting Rutgers on Saturday. Then you got Northwestern. Northwestern's playing UCLA this week. Those 2 teams combined are 1-5. USC comes to Lincoln first week in November. Trojans are 4-0, ranked 21st in the country. And then, of course, you have Penn State, number 3 in the nation. Huge game for the Nittany Lions this Saturday against Oregon in State College. And Iowa's 3-1, hosting number 11 Indiana this week in Iowa City. So a big week for many of the remaining teams on Nebraska's schedule. Huge week in the Big Ten, even with 6 of the 18 teams out of action. I'm going to say that because of the early season success of Maryland, USC, and Michigan State, that the schedule upcoming is more difficult than what I would have thought, what I said back in, say, the middle of August.
What did you think that Michigan State was going to be like this year? Because I mean, this is pretty much exactly where I thought they'd be right now.
Aiden Childs is a little better than what I thought.
Okay,
when I
was higher on him. So maybe that's just a me thing from before the season. Like, I liked him. I told people I had a Michigan State tingle before the season started.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I saw Jonathan Smith's work, and he was a very good coach at Oregon State, but I saw his work last year, and I was like, I feel like this guy's just going to get a little bit overshadowed in the Big Ten. Like the Big Ten might be a little bit too big for what, and that happens to a lot of coaches. Like happened to Mike Riley. And I don't, the comparison there is whatever. Maybe I subliminally did that because they both came from Oregon State. It happens to it doesn't happen to Kurt Signetti. He's the only guy it doesn't happen to, but who comes from the smaller world. But no, there are others too. With Michigan State, I thought they're just going to be an average team on offense, and I didn't know anything about their defense, and the defense is maybe not fantastic.
Oh, it's pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Now USC's offense is pretty good. Boston College throwing up 40, and that's
defense is bad.
Yeah, okay. That's a little bit concerning for me. So yes, their defense is pretty bad, but they're about what I thought they'd be. Maryland always does this every single year. I knew Wisconsin was going to be bad, so I thought they'd beat Wisconsin. They're exactly the same. I didn't think Minnesota would beat. I didn't think Minnesota would lose to Cal. But that's about the only difference. But Minnesota's Minnesota. They're going to do exactly what they do every year. Northwestern sucks. USC is maybe slightly better than I thought that they would be, maybe. And UCLA is, we'll see. I guess at this point, we'll see what they end up being. So my opinion really hasn't changed at all. Like I thought Nebraska would go 8-4 this season, and I still think they'll go 8-4 this season. And they're gonna lose one or two of these big games, and then they're probably going to lose one of these games. And it's very, 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 very likely that one of those other losses is going to come in the next 3 weeks, starting next Saturday. So Michigan State, Maryland, and Minnesota. I mean, these are the type of games that Nebraska has failed to win consistently. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people thinking that the schedule maybe is a tick harder now because we just watched Nebraska lose. But I think there's probably a little bit of that, and there's always the sky is falling stuff after Nebraska loses a football game. But I don't know. I rarely am like, oh, this schedule is. I rarely do that during the season just because I'm a big sample size guy.
Is it even a hot take for me to say that if Nebraska finds a way to win the next 3, that's a way bigger deal than it would have been to beat Michigan?
I don't think it would be a bigger deal than beating Michigan because I just think that one result does so much for you. But it is a step that Nebraska has not achieved as a program, like consistently winning those games. So it's a huge deal.
I can get on board with it's not as big of a deal in the big picture of the program. A win over Michigan would have done wonders for Nebraska with its national profile, and it would have done things. And I know the narrative after anytime Nebraska has a big recruiting weekend, which it did last weekend, and then loses the game, the narrative always is, well, the loss really didn't impact things that much with the recruits. There are great, and Matt Rule even said this, they're getting great reviews from the kids who visited. Well, you know what? If they would have won, they would be getting even better reviews.
Correct.
I think. So, so like on a national image level, that it would have been bigger to beat. You get more out of beating Michigan, more mileage out of beating Michigan than you could get from winning against Michigan State, Maryland, and Minnesota combined. But I think just in terms, it's 3 wins versus 1. Like, I get that. But just in terms of like what it would do for Nebraska this season to get where it wants to get, I think going on the road and winning twice, and you throw in the Michigan State to boot, like that's a bigger deal for Nebraska to be where it needs to be this season than beating Michigan, whatever confidence that would have given this team.
I look at it from the perspective of Nebraska is going to be favorites and probably close to touchdown favorites in all of these games. Maybe not.
You think not Minnesota?
Not the two.
I don't even know about Maryland. If Maryland's 5-0, is Nebraska a favorite going there? Let's say Nebraska takes care of business against Michigan State, wins that game by 7 to 10 points, and Maryland beats Washington next week at home. Maryland's playing Washington in at College Park, 5-0 Maryland. And if Maryland can go on the road and beat Wisconsin, I know it's a bad Wisconsin team. shouldn't Maryland be able to beat Washington at home? We haven't talked about Washington.
No. Different.
Okay.
That's different.
Okay.
Washington's good.
I know they have a good quarterback, but so does Maryland.
Washington has a good quarterback and a good running back. That'll take you a long way. And they play Ohio State this weekend, and I fully expect them to compete in that game. So
do you?
Yeah.
Do you?
Okay. No, I think that's different. I think beating Washington and beating Wisconsin are two different things. So
okay. Yeah, all right. I know Maryland does this every year, but what happened that game is in Seattle, that Ohio State Washington game this week.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sneaky, interesting game, according to the Connor Happer. I'm now, my eyes are open on Washington because I just forget about them. Like I forget about them when we're at Big Ten Media Days. I kind of always look around and I go, is there anybody interesting here to talk to? And I see Jed Fish over there and I'm like, nah. And then I go find somebody else. Like they, in my eyes, for whatever reason, I just can't, I haven't been able to get on board with them as a team that I want to pay attention to in the Big Ten, but they could certainly change that this weekend with the Buckeyes going out to Seattle.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just think they're the type of team that could cause some chaos, specifically against the Ohio States of the world, because their quarterback is such a dynamic threat. He's a runner. And their running back is, Jonah Coleman is really, really good. He probably, when you asked me on Saturday, if Justice Haynes was the best guy in the Big Ten, Jonah Coleman was one of the first guys that came to my mind too. So I think, I think that'll be an interesting one on Saturday. So I'm not all the way in on Maryland yet. It's very possible that they're better, but I'm going to wait and see approach with them. I think Nebraska's a favorite in all three of these next three games, from probably pretty small against Minnesota to, about a touchdown against Michigan State.
Unless I see something different from Nebraska, if the Huskers, unless I see something different from Nebraska than what we've seen through 4 games, if Nebraska goes to Minneapolis on October 17th as a favorite, that is enticing to me because the Huskers just have not got it done there. Now Minnesota's
owned them. They've owned them.
Minnesota does have to play Ohio State still before that game could get beat up a little bit in that game. We'll see what kind of state the Gophers are in when Nebraska goes up there. But Nebraska
hasn't won there since 2015. It was a comfortable win. Like that was when Nebraska was dominating Minnesota. They haven't won up there since then. It's been 10 years
since PJ came on board. He was not there in 15, correct?
His first year was.
No way, he was.
Yeah, this is his 9th year. Maybe his first year was 16. So maybe not.
After the Riley Harbaugh, Christ influx into the Big Ten. That was all in the same year. PJ has been at Minnesota since 2017. So Nebraska has not beaten PJ Fleck in the Twin Cities. Okay, so final thought on this before we take a break. My takeaway is that this is no time for Nebraska to have a hangover. Like we saw it last year when the Huskers lost to Illinois. Actually, they went and won their next 2 games because it was Purdue, which was the worst team in the Power 4 last year, and then Rutgers at home, and Nebraska played bad and won that game. But this is a different bounce back from a loss than what Nebraska had a year ago, and the Huskers had a hangover in 2024. Cannot do that in 2025, or they're going to be looking at like bad record going into November, going into going into the Northwestern game.
This is where you could get people to trust you. I mean, obviously you're not there with the Michigans of the world yet, or trying to knock off the big win, the narrative changing win. So, okay, you'll have 2 more chances at that this year, and we'll see what your preparedness level is when you get to that point. But these 4 games, these next 4 before the next opportunity to do that, this is where, you could get people to really trust you and say, okay, all right, let's beat some teams where you're going to have a good chance to win these games consistently 4 in a row. That's what people are asking for.
Yeah. All right. Yesterday I crunched some numbers, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to tell you about them. Then I'm going to ask you if they mean anything. That's coming up next. All right. A word from Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Check out the Mazda lineup of vehicles for a fit that works for you. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. It has more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than any other company as of August 25. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. Feel the Japanese craftsmanship in all of the details, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but every day. With smooth handling to intuitive controls, it's easy to enjoy your time behind the wheel of a Mazda. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you will take confidence through almost any season. Like the athletes you watch, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
And a word from Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why we have Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or even on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives like you and I. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet or certainly doing the math for the spreadsheets. Monarch can help you identify that you're not saving as much as you thought. For example, you could discover forgotten accounts from previous jobs, increase your savings rates. The financial freedom you're going to get from Monarch is one of the most important parts, at least for me. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year, 50% off your first year, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege.
All right, we're back. Wednesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. Hope you enjoyed our discussion about the Big Ten in the first segment. That was a fun exercise to go through. An exercise, a little number crunching that I did yesterday. I have a story out today on The Athletic about like what matters for Nebraska in this bye week and what you should be paying attention to. So I noticed in scouring through the Big Ten stats that Nebraska ranked 13th in the league in rushing yards per attempt. And I like to look at yards per attempt instead of yards per game because I don't know, it's just a more relevant stat. So 13th in the Big Ten in yards per attempt, 4.2, and it ranks 16th in rushing yards allowed per attempt at 5.2. Now, it doesn't help that 166 yards came on 3 plays on the ground for Michigan, but that is what it is. It's part of the equation. So Nebraska's in the bottom third, the bottom 1/3 of the league in both of those categories, yards per rush defense. So I wanted to know, over the previous 10 seasons, how many teams ranked in the bottom of the third through full seasons in both of those categories and what their success looked like.
Oh, wow. So how many Nebraska teams? That's what you're saying?
How many teams, period? Well, and how many Nebraska teams? How many teams across the entire Big Ten ranked in the bottom third in both through a full season? So you want to guess how many teams? We're talking about a 10-year sample size. How many teams in the Big Ten over 10 years were in the bottom third in yards per rush and yards per rush defense?
Probably not many. I could think of a couple teams like, the Purdue's of the, Purdue had it rolling there with Braum for a little bit.
Purdue was a common name in that to show up. It showed up often.
Yeah. So let's say, had winning records. Let's say,
well, I'm not asking about winning records. I'm asking how many, I can tell you the winning records. How many how many teams were in the bottom third?
Oh, I mean, a lot, right?
Yeah, there were 20. So it was an average of 2 per year. 2 of the 20 had winning records. It was a Purdue team and it was that Northwestern team, Braun's first team in 2023, which just seemed to continue to pull things out. Mm-hmm. That was one of the 2 that had a winning record. And then there was a Braum and Braun teams in there. Braum and Braun. Yes. So the 20 teams won a total of 43 Big Ten games. So it was an average of 2.3 wins per year.
Yeah.
If you were bad against the run and at running the football. Nebraska showed up twice in that category. This is ominous. It was 2017, the year that Mike Riley was fired, and it was 2022, the year that Scott Frost was fired 3 games into the season, and then Mickey Joseph coached the thing out. So
interesting.
Yes. Now Nebraska's 13th in yards per rush, so it's at the very top tier of the bottom third. But the fact is, this kind of validates the idea that you have to run it and stop the run.
No doubt. That's the conference. I will say this. We'll see. It's TBD for me on where they finish on stopping the run. But I'm pretty sure they're going to be in the bottom third and running the ball this year. I'm pretty confident in that. So now that doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. All this comes in context. Like you were laying out the Michigan stats, and obviously it's super lopsided, 286 to 43. You also have to throw in, what was it, 47 yards of sacks or something like that. That obviously is important in the conversation. But Nebraska, you got to get adjusted to this. This is what they're going to be this year, or at least closer to what they're going to be this year. They're not going to run it for 250 a game. They're not going to run it for 200 a game. They're not going to run it for 150 a game. I think they'd be happy to get 125, So like, think about that going forward, and you could still have success depending on how you lay out your team. If you say at the beginning, like, hey, this is what we need from you guys today. We just need to keep it honest.
Clearly the yards per rush for me, the yards per rush on the offensive side is not as big of a deal because you can get creative in the way that you get yards, and it doesn't all have to be downfield passing. Like Nebraska's passing game is multifaceted, and a lot of what Nebraska will do, I think, in the passing game to slow down the pass rush is to amp up the short passing game. They're going to be working on that, no doubt, during this bye week. And I know there was a period of time in Nebraska football where I think fans screamed every time Nebraska started to set up a screen or a short pass. Or past that. Like, I think that this is a team that's set up to be able to do that with some of the receivers and backs that Nebraska. They can be better, and it can be a part of the run game. So I think you have to adjust your mindset to the reality that if Nebraska gets 4 or 5 yards on a short pass, that's like a 4 or 5 yard run for this team, which is okay on first or second down, or it's okay on third down if it's 3rd and 4.
Yeah, I think I think defensively, that's an interesting conversation to me. Like I have sort of not given up on Nebraska's run game, but I just they have a quarterback who they feel like could throw at 300 yards a game, and you can get your yards from there. So I'm like, okay, you could work with that. I think defensively, Nebraska will hold up quite a lot better against the run against some of these other teams than they did against Michigan. Like I do think you have to factor in that some of it was Michigan. Also Nebraska probably just has to execute a little bit better. They are small up front, and people automatically go from, well, they're small up front to they're going to suck at stopping the run. They don't have to. It's just going to be harder because they have to, have linebackers fit all the time, and safeties come up and fit in the run game all the time. So I think it's going to be more difficult for them. I don't know if it's going to and I will say this, they're going to give up big runs. That's just, they're not always going to be in the right place. And so unfortunately, I have to break the news to you that the 60-yard runs are not done. There's going to be more this year, but they could still,
can't be too many more. Those are backbreakers.
Yeah. They could still be okay. They could still be okay.
So remember, I'll finish this conversation here. Remember when Nebraska played way back in August, when Nebraska played Cincinnati in the opener and Brendan Sorsby ran for a lot of yards and he keyed the Bearcats attack. They were over 200 in that game. And we said, or maybe we just parroted the talk of what we heard from Nebraska coaches and players. And you got to be careful about this. Well, we're not going to see that many more mobile quarterbacks. That's not the Big Ten style of play. So this defense is set up pretty well for what you're going to see in the Big Ten. So hello, Bryce Underwood.
Yeah.
Aiden Childs, he runs the ball. Malik Washington from Maryland. These are Nebraska's next 2 opponents. He runs the ball. Down the road, You're going to see Nico. He runs the ball. Mark Gronowski from Iowa runs the ball pretty well.
Yeah. Now,
they do
different because he doesn't throw the ball very, very well.
They don't have to defend the pass. Hey, he'll throw it well against Nebraska somehow.
Yeah, maybe. But there is a difference between Sorsby and then the battering ram quarterbacks. Like, I think Gronowski's that, and I think Underwood was that to a certain extent. Like, I think he's more dangerous with his legs than he was with his arms. So, like, I'm still good with Nebraska, locking it down through the air. They're right, but yeah, you do have to take it with a grain of salt, with some of these guys they were going to be facing.
Cincinnati and Michigan together ran for 7.7 yards per carry against the Nebraska defense. I mean,
a lot.
Can you really take into account what the Huskers did against Akron and Houston Christian? I mean, it was almost back-to-back shutouts. Like, Nebraska's defense is great against the FCS and the Group of Five, but you put them against power conference opponents, and it's been a big problem. And it doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. And I think there's things over this down period right now that John Butler and Phil Snow, and they're going to get the heads together. Matt Rule's teams have always been good against the rush. And so I have some faith just because of that they will figure some of this stuff out. But there's bigger problems that exist than just what you saw in those 3 plays that busted for big gains by Michigan.
Yeah. One more. I also get concerned that, what Michigan did on that last drive in the fourth quarter, the long 9-minute drive, that's where Nebraska is in a little bit of trouble. They need to play from ahead in these games. So that's a topic for a little bit later. But let's take a break. We'll be back. A couple of news and notes from around college football and elsewhere coming up. But first, a word from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Yes, the NFL season rolls on. In fact, there's an NFL game tomorrow night and then all throughout the weekend. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There is plenty of options available for you, including anytime touchdown scorers, live bets, just your straight up spreads, same game parlays. It's all available for you on FanDuel, and it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your football weekend. So, are you ready to go? Download the FanDuel app now by using FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet today. Yesterday, on a Tuesday, after Oklahoma State had played on Friday, Mike Gundy, longtime coach at Oklahoma State, former quarterback at Oklahoma State, was fired from his job. It had been going downhill for a couple of years, and we said goodbye.
That's an understatement.
The man who was a man, and he was once 40, but he is no longer 40.
Yeah, the Pokes have not had success in the Big 12 over the last 2 years. You could say that Mike Gundy failed to adjust. You could say that as college football changed around him in a multitude of ways, that Mike Gundy wanted to coach and work and do the things that allowed him to have unprecedented success at Oklahoma State for much of the last 20 years. And that just wasn't going to cut it in today's world of college football. And it's sad. It's sad that it has to end like this, because you would have thought that Mike Gundy would be one of those guys, one of those rare coaches, because he is Oklahoma State football. He would be one of those guys who could go out on his own terms. And that's just, that's not the case. Oklahoma State did offer him, the administration said, an opportunity to resign and then coach out the season. And Gundy said no. And that would be so not Mike Gundy, to be a lame duck and be standing there on the sidelines knowing that he had.
No, fire me. Just fire me.
For sure. So he's going to coach again. I saw his brother, Kale, the former Oklahoma assistant and Oklahoma quarterback, said that wherever Mike's going, I'm going too. So you get the Gundy package deal. Yeah. So the question as it relates to Nebraska, Dana Holgorsen, in some of the snap judgment media observations on Tuesday, was mentioned as a candidate for this. because Dana was a head coach in the Big 12 for 13 years. And in the one season before he jumped in as a head coach at West Virginia, he was Mike Gundy's offensive coordinator. That's 2010 in Stillwater. I think this is not one that Nebraska fans and Matt Rule need to worry about. Maybe that job will at some time open, whether it's after this year or perhaps after next year, and Dana will be tempted. I do not think that the Oklahoma State job is the one that he would be interested in necessarily, but a bigger deal that Oklahoma State would be interested in bringing in 54-year-old Dana Holgorsen to revive things in Stillwater. I don't see that.
Yeah, I don't really either, but we'll see how this search goes. Maybe it goes down the line a little bit. They get some no's.
I mean, if they get turned down by a bunch of people, sure.
Yeah, right. But I think what you said about Dana and where he's at right now with his football life, I mean, he's in a good spot. He's the offensive coordinator at Nebraska for 4 months a year, and then he can do whatever the hell he wants for the other months. So I think he likes that, and I think that's a good thing for him. So quality of life seems like an important thing to him at this moment.
I look at Bruce Feldman for guidance on this, and he comes out after there's a power conference coach that's fired and gives his take on it and his list. You can find that on the Athletic, and the first list of coaches that Bruce mentions for this Oklahoma State job, all to me are intriguing. So Jeff Traylor at UTSA, Eric Morris at North Texas, and G.J. Kinney, who has State of Oklahoma ties, at Texas State. He also mentioned South Florida's Alex Golish, who has worked around the Big 12 and the Big 10 as an assistant coach. So Oklahoma State 100% wants to recruit in the state of Texas and to the South.
Yep.
So if you're able to pull a head coach from that part of the country, and those guys have had success at those schools, no surprise, because there is an abundance of talent for them to recruit in the state of Texas. I think any of them, like, unless there's another job that comes open in the Big 12 or say the SEC that's more attractive, any of them, you talk about Traylor, Morris, and Kinney, are going to probably jump at that opportunity to go work at a Big 12 school. Even it's a Big 12 school that has some issues with resources in comparison to, say, like Texas Tech, BYU, and others in the league.
That's certainly where my mind went first. Texas ties or Oklahoma ties, recruiting in the South, somebody who's there right now. So yeah, those three would be good ones. The ACC announced this week that they are, they didn't even need to make an announcement because we know that they follow everything that the SEC does, but they're going to follow the SEC into the 9-game conference schedules game and require that their teams play one more game against a Power 4 team, as the SEC did with their schedule. Remember, the Big 10 does not require that extra game against a Power 4 team at this moment, leading to some disastrously horrible non-con schedules for, I don't know, teams like Indiana, just as an example. But we're seeing the college football world in terms of their conferences get a little bit closer to the same page now.
Yeah. Hey, Nebraska should not call the kettle black.
True.
Do these 6 opponents mean anything to you? Ohio, Bowling Green, North Dakota, Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, and Northern Iowa. Those are the non-conference opponents on Nebraska's schedule the next 2 years.
Hey, for the record, I'm still mad at Nebraska for canceling the Tennessee series. I wanted to see that really bad. So I do not agree with what Nebraska is doing, for the record.
Should be more mad now, I think, that like all of these conferences are not just part of Nebraska's justification for that was, you guys go figure out a way to play 9 conference games and be on the same page as us over here in the Big 10. And then we'll talk to you about playing out of conference. Well, now they've done that. And I get it. You can't go back and like undo what was done in the summer. Well, you could, but they're not going to. The thing
is, Mitch, like there is now the playoff is going to look at non-conference schedule closer here.
Right.
So I think this is something that the Big Ten probably needs to reverse course on.
Agreed.
There's going to be one less data point for them to look at, and the strength of schedule part is going to be a huge deal.
It's funny how it's flipped this fast, because we've been talking forever about the Big Ten being the one that goes out and challenges itself more and has more data points for the committee. And now all of a sudden, here's the SEC and the ACC, and they're going to play 10 conference opponents. It's a little bit tricky in the ACC because so many of those, well, maybe it's not tricky. They've already got it built in. Like if you're North Carolina, you always play South Carolina. If you're Florida State, you always play Florida. And Miami played Florida. Yeah, and then a bunch of these teams play Notre Dame already out of conference, and that counts as their 10th power opponent. So the SEC starting this next year. The schedules for conference play came out yesterday on Tuesday, so they're not wasting any time on this. And don't look now, but they're ahead of the Big Ten in boosting their playoff resume. So all this conversation through the summer, even in Vegas at Big Ten Media Days with Tony Petitti, where they could stick their chest out and say, "Don't come at us until you make your schedules look like ours." Now they're better. Now the SEC and the ACC and well, the Big 12 doesn't have that stipulation about a 10th conference opponent, but you can bet that the Big 12 is going to fall in line. I may have said Big 10. You can bet that the Big 12 is going to fall in line behind the SEC. So, all right, Big 10, ball's in your court. What are you going to do?
I imagine they will. Anything else we want to mention before we get out of here? Nebraska
basketball open practiced on Tuesday. No idea what to expect from Fred Hoiberg's team, other than they have a ton of size. So I didn't go watch, but I saw some video from inside the practice facility. You got 7'1" Leo Curtis. Rink Mast is back. Oogie, he's 6'11", the transfer from Central Michigan, and exhibition game 3 weeks from Saturday against BYU.
Oh yeah, AJ DeBanza coming to town. It's gonna be good. That'll be fun. And then there's a Nebraska volleyball game tonight. Yes,
tonight at Devaney, BTN, 6 p.m. Huskers are playing Michigan. Sneaky good opponent. Michigan's 10-1, had been kind of a doormat in the Big Ten for a long time, and the Wolverines, I don't know that they've played much of a schedule, but they're 10-1 coming into open Big Ten play. And according to Danny Busboom Kelly, I heard her on the Huskers radio network last night. Michigan's got some cannons, some firepower out there on the pins. So might be a decent match. Might be a decent match for the number 1 ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers. They have Penn State on the road next Friday. So looking ahead down the schedule, that's the one that's really interesting on the horizon.
Okay. That is it for us today. We'll be back at the normal time tomorrow. Don't forget to get your questions in for the mailbag. We'll still do that on Friday as well. And a chance to go off the beaten path wherever you guys want to go, since there's no game.
Right. Do it. Send us some weird stuff.
It's another big moment for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present college football kickoff. That's where Drake Toll, Gary Patterson, Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts are sitting on Thursdays throughout the season. College football kickoff only on Fire TV.